Escape Engineers Inspector Summary Video. We're here in Trenton. We got a fire escape here that was hit by a truck. I'm at the very top floor, and I'm going to walk all the way down and talk about that cantilever that got the major damage. Looking down, you can see that the fire escape was hit this way severely, and definitely has deflection, including on the cantilever, but I'll show you when I get down there. And that affected, when it pulled, it also pulled that floor. That floor being pulled pushed this floor. And we got some evidence of cracking on the cement and some evidence of cracking here, and as well as some cracking there that basically created fresh and brand new. And that's an indication that the fire escape did get a shove and a push, and that is unrelated to us. So any activity on the brick must be done by a mason. Anything that's related to the attachment of the fire escape is within our scope of work and inclusive in any price given by any vendor. So the three codes that we're going to be talking about here is that the fire escape, depending on the structural condition, a load test may be ordered to bring it back into service. That's the code for New Jersey, 1028.6. The International Building Code asks that you examine, test, or certify a fire escape. So this fire escape, if we want to spot repair it and then load test it, we can. And the NFPA says the authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test or other evidence of strength. And this fire escape at this time cannot be load tested, and it cannot be certified. It does not pass the confidence test. It has some work that needs to be done to it. So again, you can spot repair it and then load test it, or in some cases a refurb of the entire structure will actually negate the need for a load test, and sometimes it's cheaper than spot repairing and load testing the structure. The other thing that's required, fire escapes must be structurally sound and must be kept painted in order to be brought back into service. This fire escape will definitely need a paint job. The fire escape is older than 1978, so EPA rules regarding lead are in effect here, so you must be an EPA renovated licensed person to handle lead-based paint. The other issue here on this fire escape is that because of the lead, you can't weld on this fire escape. There is very little to no welding that I see now, but welding will not be the standard repair or an industry standard repair for this, in that almost 100% of this fire escape is all bolted. See? It is original hardware everywhere, so all this original hardware, if it's in good order, can stay, but then you must conclude in a load test. So all original hardware, square head bolts, and even rivets. The only way that you can sign off on them is to conclude in a load test. So if you want to keep 50, 75, 100-year-old rivets and bolts, you can, but the load test is the guarantee that they're in good order. Otherwise, you change these rivets and you change these bolts, there is no need for a load test. There can't be any rust in any of these connections. All connections into the building must be verified, and if there's a through bolt and a plate on the back, that interior bolt must be verified also, that the connections into the building are also part of this. So it's not just the external connections here, it's also any internal connections into the building must be verified. So going down, let's take a look at what we have here. Wall damage here that we think and believe was part of the smash from the truck. It reverberated up 3 floors, which is not uncommon for it to reverberate up 3 floors. 100% of these treads must be changed out. Even though they have new bolts in them, the fact that they got pushed, they made them suspect, so we got to take them out and put new bolts in. At that same time, we got to make sure that there's no rust in any of these connections. Looks like some of it is open, but it must be sealed because the corrosion created cracks and crevices. Again, all these rivets. If you want to keep the rivets, you need to back them up with half-inch bolts and then seal this area. You don't have to take out rivets, but you have to back them up in order to avoid the load test. So if those are all in good order, you have to back those up with new bolting and then seal it to avoid the load test. Any wall connections, you got to get in there and secure that, because if we're getting some stainage going down, so that's got to be kept from water intrusion on all connections into the building. Verify it inside, outside, and you got to make sure that it's sealed from water intrusion. All repairs to treads sealed from any water intrusion. All this rust must be removed. Change that bolt, but before you put it back, you got to prime and seal the area, and then you can rebolt it, and make sure you use 35 to 50-year silicone on these connections. Going down, the entire rails. If you leave behind any bolts, got to load test it. You change the bolt and there is no load test. This fire escape platform did get pushed because the fire escape got pushed that way. this staircase connected to this fixed structure pushed this platform that way. So again, all these connections into the wall must be verified as part of this repair to avoid the load test. This platform and these connections are the same as upstairs. The same issue applies. You got to scrape using EPA renovator licensed people to make sure you collect all these chips and that you properly dispose them as per EPA guidelines. Let's take a look at this thing that's holding up the unit down below. The cable is older, so that cable needs to be replaced. Pulley systems need to be greased. These rivets need to be reinforced or replaced on the back and on the bottom. And this whole unit needs to be sealed from water intrusion. Down below you can see the severe damage from the truck that was severe crinkled the first 3 treads on this fire escape, so that those must be fully repaired or replaced. Has a weight box inside. This cantilever must be it must be balanced so that it drops upon release. Either you step on it, the first or second step, it must drop 2 to 3 feet per second, hit the ground and stay down, or it has to have a release arm that lets it drop. All these connections must be free of all internal rust. No rust in any connections. In order to avoid a load test, you must have 100% free rust of any connection on this fire escape. All these treads need to come out, rebolted, and then resealed to make sure that there's no rust. You can see a little bit of a bend on the straps that came from when the thing pushed and pulled. It buckled a little bit there. You see the buckle down on the cantilever. This bracket that goes all the way up, I think it was an add-on. Looks like it's just reinforcement, probably from a previous, but this one also needs to just make sure that you got some welds up there. Can't have any welds unless you want to x-ray them or load test them, but as soon as you pop a bolt in it, the welding factor is removed and the bolt becomes the primary, the weld becomes secondary. You can definitely see that this thing pulled away out of the building, so we got to check the through bolt, check the plate on the inside, because she's definitely tight here with 1 inch, but away from the wall they're 2 inches, so she's definitely pulled out. There's definitely a bend on the structure here. This is bend. The photographs will show the bend. So there was definitely a severe force pushing it this way. It buckled a little bit of the flat, buckled 2 to 3 treads at the beginning. The railing system got all crinkled, so all that needs to be redone. 100% of any rivets, any bolts must be changed. Can't have any rust in any connection. To avoid the load test, you got to avoid the weld connection. She stressed the connection here. She stressed the connection here. We have to find out how this is inside, make sure. And these welded connections is one of our issues, so we have to make a gusset plate here so that we can basically pick up, because we can't really trust welds without x-raying them or load testing them. So that's another thing that needs to be done here. These are all rivets down below. As you can see, 100% of all rivets must be replaced or reinforced with a backup bolt if they're in good to excellent condition. This held cantilever, there's got to be a release arm here, so that way when you release it, she'll drop 2 to 3 feet per second and hit the ground and stay down, or she's got to activate. As soon as I touch this step or the second step, she'll go down, hit the ground and stay down at 2 to 3 feet per second. So it's got to be perfectly balanced. You got to rebalance the cantilever as part of this job. She cannot you can't walk out 5 or 6 steps and watch it come down 10 to 15 feet per second, because it'll eject the person. It's a violent drop. So we got to make sure that that's working. 100% of all the connections, once they're cleaned, they got to be silicone shut and cleaned. Any welded connections, you need to back it up with a gusset and a bolt. And then every joint must be sealed to avoid any future water intrusion on this fire escape. So again, to avoid the load test, you need to refurbish the entire fire escape. This fire escape now needs to be discussed with a city official, and the following is going to be determined. If there is engineer oversight requirement on this, with 3 visits, an initial, a mid, and a final by either a PE, an architect, or a fire escape engineer, that is to be discussed with a city official. If a permit is going to be needed on this, is to be discussed with a city official. The painting doesn't need a permit, can be done by anyone. But does have to have, because of the lead, you have to have an EPA renovator's license in order to touch the lead. And on this, the fire escape right now is not functional until such time, so it does need emergency repair. The building is an active building, so she does need to have, minimally she needs to have this section of the fire escape made functional. She needs to have all these other areas made functional so that they can assure that it can be used for a one-time fire emergency. So that's an emergency repair that can be done immediately to make it. Fire escape engineers inspect the summary video. So again, we're here in Trenton. This fire escape got damaged by a truck. And again, so it got smashed here, smashed it that way, and it crinkled a little bit of the flat, the 6-inch by 1/4 flat. It also bent the angles right there, as you can see, pushed it back. It also bent the angles there. It also bent the angle there and bent the angle there, pulling this upper staircase. You can see where the force is great that it pulled away from the building right there. You can see the fire escape is sort of kinked. You can see from here that the fire escape is definitely pushing to the left. That left pulled that staircase, pulled that platform to the left, making all those connections suspect. Pushing that staircase and pushing that up there to the right, making that connection suspect, staircase suspect. So again, we can spot repair under the control of engineer oversight all the connections, and then leave all the good to excellent connections behind, and then conclude in a load test, full paint job, and this fire escape will be back to service. But in a lot of times, it's just cheaper to refurbish the whole fire escape, avoid the load test, and we need to get this cantilever now balanced so that when it drops 2 to 3 feet per second when you hit the first 2 steps, or you're going to put a release arm on here so that it releases the cantilever and it drops 2 to 3 feet per second. That also stops people from breaking in. The other thing we'll also look at as to whether or not the fire escape can be the fire escape can have it be more horizontal, and to look at a possible bollard. And I would recommend highly, from this happening again, and because of this, possibly burying a bollard somewhere right here, 4 feet deep. The pipe should be at least 6-inch, sticking about 4 feet, painted yellow, so that as a truck comes and does this in the future, they'll have to swing away from this bollard, and that will keep this from getting hit in the future. And then it'll also keep anybody from parking underneath, because the bollard will be just inside this, but probably about 12 inches out. So just probably right at the asphalt line will be a painted bollard. I highly recommend, and that could be extra as a requirement to basically keep people from hitting this. You can also put some striping on the ground to basically stop trucks from coming here. Put signage on the wall to basically make them aware that there's a low-hanging fire escape here at 12 to 14 feet. Any questions? Fire escape engineers, 866-649-0333, 866-649-0333. And there's one last piece. With this hit, you can see that angle, that 2x2 going up, is that bowed going up to the very top. So it was a good enough hit to cause enough damage here. Any questions? 866-649-0333, Fire Escape Engineers.